The crystal towers of Abu Dhabi pierce the Arabian sky like golden needles, each surface reflecting the promise of infinite wealth. At sunset, the Emirates Palace glows amber against turquoise waters where superyachts drift like floating mansions. This is paradise built from desert sand, where dreams materialize into reality for those fortunate enough to claim them. But paradise has shadows, and some dreams become nightmares. This is the story of Liza Manlapig, a 31-year-old Filipina who believed she had won life's lottery when a royal household offered her employment. Instead, she discovered that in palaces where absolute power rules without question, the powerless simply disappear without trace or justice. 8,000 miles away, in the cramped alleys of Barangay Payatas, dreams felt like cruel jokes. Liza Manlapig shared a sagging wooden bed with her 3 younger siblings in a 2-room shanty that trembled during typhoons and flooded during monsoons. Their home perched precariously on bamboo stilts above a creek that carried sewage, plastic waste, and the persistent smell of poverty through their neighborhood. Roberto Manlapig navigated Manila's chaotic streets 14 hours daily behind the wheel of his jeepney, weaving between buses and motorcycles while passengers paid their 7 peso fares in crumpled bills. His calloused hands gripped the steering wheel with the same determination that kept his family fed, though barely. Carmen Manlapig rose before dawn to collect laundry from middle-class neighbors, her hands permanently stained from cheap bleach and harsh detergents as she scrubbed clothes by the creek behind their house. During the rainy season, brown water seeped through their floorboards, carrying the stench of open sewers and broken dreams. Liza studied by candlelight when electricity was cut for non-payment, her notebooks balanced on her knees while rainwater dripped steadily into metal containers. Her school uniform, worn for 3 consecutive years, was more patches than original fabric, but Carmen insisted it be clean and pressed every morning. Despite impossible circumstances, Liza possessed an intellect that teachers recognized immediately. She walked 2 hours each direction to reach the overcrowded public school, where 40 students squeezed into classrooms designed for 20. Carmen filled their evenings with stories of overseas Filipino workers who had transformed their families' lives through foreign employment. Her daily mantra echoed through their 1-room sanctuary: sacrifice now, live better later. At 18, Liza graduated as valedictorian, but university remained financially impossible. She accepted work at a garment factory in nearby Marikina, operating sewing machines 12 hours daily for wages that barely covered her family's basic needs. Her nimble fingers, once guided by textbooks and dreams, now stitched identical patterns into fabric destined for export to countries she'd only seen in geography books. In early 2018, Golden Opportunities Recruitment Agency established a satellite office near Payatas Market. Their glossy promotional materials promised transformed lives through overseas employment, featuring photographs of smiling Filipinas in crisp uniforms standing before marble-floored mansions. Mrs. Sarah Delgado, the agency's regional coordinator, possessed the polished presentation style that made impossible dreams seem achievable. The Al Nahyan family position she described seemed too good to be true. A distinguished royal household seeking a mature, responsible woman to manage their domestic operations. The salary of 2,500 dirhams monthly exceeded anything Liza had imagined possible. The employment contract appeared comprehensive and legitimate, specifying reasonable working hours, private accommodation, medical insurance, and annual vacation allowances. Roberto made the most difficult decision of his life when he sold his jeepney to finance Liza's overseas employment application. The battered vehicle represented 15 years of grinding daily labor through Manila's unforgiving traffic. Its sale provided money for application fees, medical examinations, passport processing, and documentation required for legal overseas employment. On a humid September morning in 2018, Liza boarded her first airplane at Ninoy Aquino International Airport, carrying a single suitcase containing her entire worldly possessions. As Manila's sprawling slums disappeared beneath clouds, she whispered prayers of gratitude for the opportunity to escape poverty and transform her family's destiny. Dubai International Airport overwhelmed Liza's senses with its vast terminals and streams of wealthy travelers from every continent. The drive through the Emirates revealed landscapes that challenged her understanding of reality. Glass towers rose impossibly high from desert sand, while artificial islands shaped like palm trees stretched into waters so blue they seemed painted. The Al Nahyan compound occupied several acres in Abu Dhabi's most exclusive residential district, surrounded by high walls topped with ornate metalwork. Manicured gardens featured fountains where peacocks wandered freely between imported trees and flowering shrubs. The main residence resembled European palaces, all marble columns, crystal chandeliers, and architectural details that spoke of unlimited resources. Her accommodation exceeded every expectation. A private room with attached bathroom, air conditioning, and Wi-Fi connection allowing unlimited communication with family back home. Amara del Rosario, the veteran Filipina head housekeeper, conducted Liza's orientation with gentle efficiency. Her advice carried weight. Follow the rules, work hard, stay invisible. The family valued privacy above everything else. What happened in this house stayed in this house. During her first 3 months, Liza's responsibilities involved standard domestic work, maintaining guest suites and organizing family quarters. The work was demanding but manageable, and her monthly salary arrived punctually. Roberto and Carmen used her first remittance to repair their roof, ending years of plastic sheeting and buckets collecting rainwater. Everything seemed perfect. After 3 months, subtle changes began that Liza initially interpreted as recognition of her exceptional performance. Sheikh Fahad Al Nahyan, the family's 46-year-old patriarch, started requesting her assistance with special projects, organizing his private study, preparing traditional Filipino dishes, maintaining his personal gymnasium equipment. The sheikh appeared cultured and worldly, speaking several languages and displaying genuine interest in Philippine culture. He complimented her work ethic and occasionally gave her small gifts: expensive hand cream, silk scarves, gold jewelry. These seemed like generous gestures from a grateful employer rather than calculated moves of a predator identifying his next victim. The first warning came when Sheikh Fahad requested Liza's assignment to his private quarters exclusively. Amara expressed quiet concern but couldn't refuse direct orders from the family. Her whispered advice carried urgency that Liza didn't yet understand. Be very careful. Some assignments came with complications beyond imagination. Liza's new assignment isolated her from other household staff like a slow-acting poison. She now worked exclusively in Sheikh Fahad's private wing, a luxurious apartment within the compound featuring his study, private gym, entertainment room, and guest suite. Her hours became irregular, often extending late into the evening for urgent projects that seemed increasingly personal rather than professional. The other domestic workers watched her disappear into the sheikh's quarters each morning, returning to her room after midnight with exhaustion etched across her features. Sheikh Fahad's manipulation was sophisticated and gradual, disguised as cultural curiosity and genuine friendship. He requested her opinions on expensive art pieces, asked her to prepare traditional Filipino meals while he watched and learned, and insisted she share stories about her childhood dreams during their extended conversations. These sessions lasted hours, creating an illusion of intellectual equality that confused Liza's understanding of appropriate employer-employee boundaries. The sheikh learned about her family's financial struggles with the precision of a strategist gathering intelligence. When Liza mentioned her brother's asthma requiring expensive medication, Sheikh Fahad quietly arranged for additional money to be sent to her family. When she worried about her parents' aging and deteriorating health, he suggested bringing them to Abu Dhabi for treatment at his personal expense. Each generous gesture created deeper obligations and gratitude that clouded her judgment about his true intentions. Physical boundaries eroded slowly, almost imperceptibly. The sheikh began requesting massages for back pain after his gym sessions, asking Liza to help him with personal grooming tasks typically handled by male staff. Each request seemed reasonable in isolation, but collectively they established an intimacy that made Liza increasingly uncomfortable. Yet her financial dependence on the position and her family's reliance on her income made resistance seem impossible. Sheikh Fahad's seduction strategy combined emotional manipulation with financial leverage, painting himself as her mentor and benefactor. He discovered Liza's dream of opening a grocery store in the Philippines and began discussing detailed business plans, offering to provide startup capital that would transform her modest ambition into a thriving enterprise. He spoke of making her dream a reality in exchange for her loyalty and discretion, words that carried weight beyond their surface meaning. Late-night work sessions became more frequent and personal as the sheikh shared wine while discussing philosophy, religion, and life experiences. He portrayed himself as misunderstood by his traditional family, trapped in an arranged marriage that brought no happiness, seeking genuine connection with someone who understood struggle and ambition. This narrative positioned Liza as his emotional equal and intellectual companion, creating psychological intimacy that made his eventual sexual advances seem natural rather than predatory. The sheikh's gifts became more expensive and personal designer clothes that fit her perfectly, expensive perfumes, jewelry that he insisted she wear during their private meetings. Each gift came with subtle reminders of his power and generosity, creating debt and obligation that trapped Liza in an increasingly complicated relationship. His words echoed in her mind constantly. She was special, different from other employees, someone who understood his vision and shared his sophisticated tastes. When Sheikh Fahad finally made explicit sexual advances in February 2019, Liza's resistance was weakened by months of psychological grooming. Her financial dependence on the job, her family's reliance on her income, and her isolated position within the household made refusal seem impossible. The sheikh presented their relationship as romantic and special, insisting that cultural and social barriers prevented them from being open about their connection. Their secret relationship created complex emotions for Liza. Part of her genuinely believed in the sheikh's affection and promises of a future together. He spoke of traveling together, introducing her to influential people, helping her establish businesses beyond her wildest dreams. These promises made the secrecy and moral complications seem temporarily acceptable, a necessary sacrifice for eventual happiness and security. However, Liza also experienced growing anxiety about the relationship's implications. She understood the cultural and legal risks of engaging sexually with her employer, particularly a married man from a royal family. The potential consequences, deportation, imprisonment, social shame weighed heavily on her mind during quiet moments. Communication with her family became strained as she struggled to maintain normalcy during video calls while hiding the relationship that dominated her daily life. By August 2019, Liza's menstrual cycle irregularities and persistent morning nausea prompted her to purchase a pregnancy test during her rare shopping trip to Abu Dhabi's city center. The positive result confirmed her fears and complicated her already difficult situation beyond imagination. Her first emotion was panic, understanding that pregnancy outside marriage carried severe legal and social consequences in the UAE, particularly for foreign domestic workers. Her second emotion was hope perhaps this child would finally give her the security and status she had dreamed of. Maybe Sheikh Fahad would divorce his wife and marry her, legitimizing their relationship and providing for their child's future. These fantasies sustained her through the physical discomfort and emotional turmoil of early pregnancy, while she agonized over how to tell Sheikh Fahad about their situation. Sheikh Fahad's response to Liza's pregnancy announcement shattered every illusion she had maintained about their relationship. His carefully constructed facade of affection and respect vanished instantly, replaced by cold calculation and undisguised contempt. The man who had whispered sweet promises and future plans now spoke to her like she was an insect that had invaded his pristine world. He paced his private study while Liza sat frozen in shock, her hands instinctively protecting her stomach. The sheikh's anger was terrifying not just in its intensity, but in its complete dismissal of her humanity. She realized with growing horror that she had never been anything more than temporary entertainment, easily discarded when inconvenient. His voice carried the authority of generations of royal privilege as he hissed his verdict. She was a stupid girl who had destroyed everything. The sheikh's commands came swift and merciless. She would end this immediately. He knew doctors who would handle this quietly. No questions, no records, no complications. He spoke about ending her pregnancy like scheduling a routine appointment, his casual cruelty revealing the vast gulf between their worlds. When Liza whispered that this was their child, his rage intensified beyond anything she had witnessed. This was not his child, he roared. This was a mistake that threatened everything he had built: his family, his reputation, his position. His accusations struck Liza like physical blows, reframing her love and hope as manipulation and greed. The Sheikh's fury evolved into cold strategic planning as he outlined her limited options with clinical precision. He retrieved an envelope from his desk containing cash and airline tickets, placing them on the table like evidence in a trial. The envelope contained 50,000 dirhams, more money than Liza had ever seen, along with a first-class ticket to Manila departing in 3 days. Sheikh Fahad explained that the money was enough to support her family for years, to build the grocery store she had dreamed about, to create the life she claimed to want. This was her chance to be smart, he continued. Take the money, disappear quietly, and everyone benefits. Her family gets security, she gets her dreams, and he continues his life without complications. His logic was seductive, presenting her exile as a mutual victory rather than abandonment. But Liza's response surprised him. Despite her fear, despite her isolation, despite her complete powerlessness in this situation, she found strength in the life growing inside her. She would not kill their baby, she said quietly, and she would not disappear like she never existed. Sheikh Fahad's expression darkened further. He had expected compliance, gratitude even, for his generous offer. Liza's refusal challenged his absolute authority in ways he found intolerable. Over the following days, Sheikh Fahad's campaign to change Liza's mind intensified. He restricted her movements within the compound, monitored her communications, and began psychological warfare designed to break her resistance. He arranged for other household staff to whisper stories about domestic workers who had disappeared after causing problems for royal families. He showed her news articles about Filipinas deported for moral crimes, their lives destroyed by scandal and legal consequences. Each story was carefully chosen to demonstrate the futility of resistance. Look at what happens to women who challenge powerful families, he would say, showing her newspaper clippings. They lose everything: their jobs, their reputations, their ability to support their families. The Sheikh also manipulated her family situation from afar, secretly arranging for Roberto to lose his security guard job, creating financial pressure that forced her parents to depend even more heavily on her remittances. When Liza called home, her parents mentioned their growing financial difficulties, unknowingly applying pressure for her to maintain her employment. Your father lost his job, Sheikh Fahad mentioned casually during one of their confrontations. Such unfortunate timing. But these things happen when people don't have proper connections to protect them. His implication was clear: he could help or hurt her family depending on her cooperation. Liza began experiencing physical symptoms of stress: insomnia, nausea beyond normal pregnancy symptoms, panic attacks that left her gasping for breath. Her isolation within the compound meant she had no one to confide in or seek support from during this psychological assault. The Sheikh's pressure was relentless, wearing down her resistance day by day. On September 15, 2019, Sheikh Fahad summoned Liza to his study for what he announced would be their final discussion about her situation. He had grown tired of her resistance and decided to end the matter definitively. He had been patient with her, he began, his voice carrying deadly calm. He had offered her generous solutions, given her time to think rationally, tried to help her understand the reality of her position. But her selfishness and stupidity had exhausted his tolerance. He outlined new consequences for her continued refusal. Her family would face systematic harassment, lost jobs, legal troubles, social ostracism. Her younger siblings would be denied educational opportunities. Her parents would lose their home through manufactured legal problems. Every aspect of their lives would become a battlefield where they couldn't win. He had resources she couldn't imagine, Sheikh Fahad explained coldly. He could make her family's life in the Philippines a living hell for generations. But Liza had found unexpected strength during her weeks of torment. Speaking with other domestic workers, she had learned that several Filipino women in similar situations had received support from human rights organizations and diplomatic channels. The knowledge that she wasn't completely alone gave her courage to maintain her position. She would not kill her baby, and she would not disappear quietly, she said, her voice trembling but determined. This child deserved better than being erased because it was inconvenient for him. Sheikh Fahad's mask of civilized discussion finally dropped completely. His response was genuine menace. She had no idea what she had just chosen, but she would learn very soon exactly how powerless she truly was. In the days following their final confrontation, Sheikh Fahad's behavior toward Liza shifted from threatening to eerily calm. He stopped attempting to persuade her, stopped monitoring her communications obsessively, and seemed to have accepted her refusal to abort the pregnancy or leave quietly. This sudden change filled Liza with even greater anxiety than his previous threats. The silence felt more dangerous than his rage. Amara, the head housekeeper, noticed the change in atmosphere with the instincts of someone who had survived 8 years in royal service. She found excuses to check on Liza more frequently, sensing that something sinister was developing. When powerful men stop arguing, they start planning, she whispered during one of their brief encounters. Her words carried the weight of experience and fear that made Liza's blood run cold. Sheikh Fahad began altering Liza's work schedule in subtle but significant ways. Her cleaning duties were expanded to include areas of the compound she had never accessed before: basement storage rooms, upper-floor guest suites, and most importantly, the narrow service staircase that connected different levels of the main residence. He insisted she familiarize herself with these areas for future responsibilities, his tone casual despite the calculated precision of his instructions. The service staircase particularly concerned Amara when she learned about Liza's new assignments. The narrow concrete steps, used primarily for moving supplies between floors, had no security cameras and were rarely frequented by other staff members. The staircase ended at a landing near the servant quarters back entrance, with a significant drop to concrete pavement below. It was the perfect location for an accident that wouldn't be witnessed or recorded. On September 18, 2019, Sheikh Fahad conducted what appeared to be a routine inspection of Liza's expanded duties. He walked her through each new area methodically, pointing out specific cleaning requirements and emphasizing the importance of thorough work in these remote sections of the compound. His demeanor was professional, almost friendly, but Liza felt like a lamb being led to slaughter. Every instinct screamed danger, yet she had no concrete reason to refuse his instructions. The following evening, September 19th, Sheikh Fahad summoned Liza for an urgent cleaning assignment in the service staircase area. The timing was calculated perfectly: minimal staff presence, other workers either off-duty or occupied with evening routines in distant parts of the compound. Liza's growing fear made her hands tremble as she gathered cleaning supplies, but her financial dependence and legal vulnerability left her unable to refuse without causing suspicion. At 10:47 p.m., Ahmed Hassan, the night security guard making his routine patrol, heard sounds of struggle emanating from the service staircase area. Muffled voices carried through the narrow corridors, followed by the crash of items falling and scraping against concrete walls. The sounds lasted approximately 3 minutes before sudden, complete silence fell over that section of the compound like a suffocating blanket. Ahmed discovered Liza's body at 11:15 p.m., crumpled at the bottom of the service staircase with severe head trauma that had rendered her unconscious. Her position seemed unnatural for someone who had simply slipped and fallen. Blood spatter patterns on the concrete walls suggested impact from significant height, but the distribution didn't match a straightforward tumble downstairs. Personal items were scattered unnaturally across the landing, as if thrown rather than dropped during a fall. Sheikh Fahad appeared almost immediately after Ahmed's discovery, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the scene of apparent tragedy. He surveyed the situation with clinical detachment before pronouncing his verdict. Liza must have slipped on the concrete stairs. Such accidents were unfortunate but not uncommon in large households where staff worked long hours and fatigue led to carelessness. His controlled response and immediate presence raised questions that Ahmed noted but dared not voice. The sheikh summoned his personal medical team and arranged immediate transportation to Abu Dhabi's most prestigious private hospital. Dr. Rashid Al-Mahmoud's preliminary examination revealed injuries consistent with a significant fall, but also defensive wounds that suggested physical struggle. Bruises on Liza's arms and wrists indicated someone had grabbed her forcefully, while evidence under her fingernails suggested she had fought desperately against her attacker. The pregnancy was confirmed at 12 weeks, the healthy fetus lost due to trauma sustained during the fall. Hospital staff whispered among themselves about the inconsistencies in the official story, but pressure from the royal family's representatives ensured their silence. Several nurses and technicians leaked details to colleagues and friends, but these whispers never reached official channels or investigative authorities. Police Captain Khalid Al-Zahra arrived at the hospital to file the required incident report. A veteran investigator with 15 years of experience, he immediately noticed witness statement inconsistencies and physical evidence that contradicted the accidental death narrative. However, the case involved a prominent royal family, and Al-Zahra understood the political realities that governed such situations in the Emirates. Security footage from the service staircase area was mysteriously corrupted for the relevant time frame, making independent verification of events impossible. The hospital autopsy was blocked by family requests citing religious and cultural considerations. The Philippine embassy received notification with minimal details a tragic accident involving one of their nationals, nothing more requiring investigation or diplomatic intervention. The royal family's legal team moved swiftly to control the narrative and limit exposure. They offered to handle all cremation arrangements and paperwork, presenting this as a generous gesture to spare Liza's family additional trauma during their time of grief. The case was officially closed within 48 hours, despite significant evidence gaps that would have demanded further investigation under normal circumstances. Detective Al-Zahra documented his private doubts in personal notes that would never see official light. He recognized the signs of intimate partner violence and calculated murder, but also understood that challenging the royal family's version of events would end his career and potentially endanger his own safety. The truth about Liza Manlapig's death would remain buried beneath layers of privilege, power, and institutional complicity that protected the guilty while silencing the innocent. September 23, 2019. Manila's Ninoy Aquino International Airport arrivals hall buzzed with the usual chaos of reuniting families and returning overseas workers. But Carmen Manlapig's world collapsed into silence when she received the sealed urn containing her daughter's ashes. The same woman who had sent Liza off with prayers and hope 11 months earlier now crumpled to the cold terminal floor, her keening wail cutting through the ambient noise like a blade through fabric. Roberto stood beside her in stunned silence, his calloused hands holding the brief apology letter from Golden Opportunities Recruitment Agency. The formal language offered condolences for their tragic loss and assured them that all proper procedures had been followed, but provided no real explanation for how their vibrant daughter had simply fallen downstairs and died. His growing suspicion burned quietly behind grief-stricken eyes that had seen enough of life's cruelties to recognize when truth was being hidden. The family's desperate attempts to contact UAE authorities met with bureaucratic walls designed to exhaust and discourage. The Philippine embassy's limited response cited diplomatic constraints and assured them that all appropriate inquiries had been made. Department of Foreign Affairs officials spoke in carefully measured phrases about respecting host country investigations while protecting their citizens' interests, but offered no concrete actions or answers. Liza's younger siblings, Miguel and Maria, refused to accept the official story. They had spoken with their sister just days before her death, and she had seemed anxious but not suicidal or careless. Their demands for detailed investigation fell on deaf ears, while the family's financial crisis deepened without Liza's monthly remittances. Community members rallied with small donations and emotional support, but official silence surrounded their tragedy like an impenetrable fortress. 3 weeks after Liza's death, Maria Santos, a former household worker who had briefly overlapped with Liza at the Al Nahyan compound, broke her silence through an anonymous post in a major OFW support group Facebook page. Her detailed account described Liza's final weeks, her growing fear of the Sheikh, and most damning, her last whispered conversation. "He'll make me disappear if I don't do what he wants." The post exploded across social media, gaining 50,000 shares within 24 hours as Filipino communities worldwide recognized the pattern of abuse and silencing they had witnessed countless times before. International human rights organizations took notice, with Migrant Rights Network beginning preliminary investigation into systematic abuse of domestic workers in Gulf state royal households. Sheikh Fahad's legal team moved swiftly to contain the damage. Cease and desist orders flooded social media platforms, claiming privacy violations and defamatory content. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram removed posts about Liza's case within days, citing terms of service violations. News outlets that had begun investigating received pressure from UAE diplomatic channels, while Maria Santos faced immediate deportation threats and job termination that forced her into hiding. Within 1 week, Liza's story had been systematically erased from public discourse despite overwhelming evidence of foul play. The speed and efficiency of the suppression campaign revealed the vast resources deployed to protect powerful perpetrators while silencing their victims' voices. Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs officials privately acknowledged the cover-up but remained powerless against diplomatic realities that prioritized economic relationships over individual justice. UAE labor departments dismissed family inquiries with form letters, while Human Rights Watch found their documentation efforts blocked by legal barriers and institutional non-cooperation. Embassy staff whispered among themselves about the truth they couldn't officially acknowledge, while Golden Opportunities Agency quietly had its license revoked without public explanation or accountability. The pattern of similar cases became clear to advocates who documented abuse systematically. Liza's death represented one incident among hundreds where domestic workers died under suspicious circumstances. Their cases closed quickly to avoid international attention or diplomatic complications. Legal barriers prevented independent investigations, while compensation and accountability remained impossible dreams for grieving families. But Liza's story survived in underground networks that developed organically among overseas Filipino workers. Secret support groups used encrypted messaging to share dangerous situations and early warning signs. Anonymous documentation projects preserved evidence of abuse cases that official channels ignored or suppressed. Safe house networks emerged to help domestic workers escape life-threatening situations, while underground railroad systems facilitated emergency evacuation from abusive households. Digital evidence preservation efforts ensured that testimonies survived despite official suppression attempts. International solidarity among domestic worker advocates created cross-border support systems that transcended national boundaries and diplomatic constraints. Liza's case became a powerful symbol of systemic abuse that training programs used to help workers recognize warning signs and seek help before situations became fatal. In Barangay Payatas, Carmen maintained her nightly ritual of lighting a candle beneath Liza's photograph while whispering the truth that official investigations had buried. "You did not fall, you were pushed." Roberto quietly collected evidence and testimonies from other OFW families, building an unofficial case file that documented patterns of abuse and cover-ups spanning decades. Community donations funded Miguel and Maria's education, ensuring that Liza's sacrifice would not be entirely wasted. Her name circulated through OFW safety networks as a cautionary tale, while annual memorial services in Payatas drew hundreds of families who had lost loved ones to similar circumstances. A small shrine in the family home displayed her nursing school graduation photos alongside flowers and prayer candles that never went out. The community grocery store that opened in Liza's memory became an informal headquarters for families seeking information about missing or deceased overseas workers. Young women preparing for foreign employment received warnings and safety training that included Liza's story as a central example of how quickly situations could turn deadly. Her truth survived in whispered warnings passed between domestic workers, in encrypted messages shared through secret networks, and in the prayers of mothers who lit candles each night for daughters working in foreign palaces where power ruled absolutely and justice remained an impossible dream. Though official records claim she died by accident, those who knew better preserved the real story. Liza Manlapig was murdered for refusing to be silenced, and her death would not be forgotten by those who understood that speaking truth to power sometimes demands the ultimate sacrifice.